Okay, welcome to another episode of Cool Tools Show and Tell. Our special guest this week is Joshua Schachter. And Joshua, would you please introduce yourself to our watchers and listeners, please?
Hi, I'm a entrepreneur and founder and angel investor, and now I recently started at a venture fund. I invented tagging back in the day, which you've probably seen, and I run an event around robotics for automobiles at the racetrack called Self-Racing Cars.
And you, as long as I've known you, have also been a maker and someone who likes to curate things both for amusement and for the good of humanity. So, Joshua, what do you have for us this time? You've been a previous guest on our podcast.
I think twice already so far.
At least twice, right? And so you always have interesting things that I don't know about. So tell me about one of your favorite tools these days.
It's this one's a bit timely, but I saw somewhere and started buying stuff. Because the dollar is very strong in relation to the Japanese yen right now, a lot of tools are inexpensive relatively for very interesting stuff. This year, and you can go to Amazon and Amazon.jp, and it's mostly pretty easy to deal with and buy things. This year I've been giving out or been buying to give out as gifts Vampliers, which are they come in various sizes, but it's this sort of plier, and they have little it's got the normal slots this way, but they also have slots going down this way, so you can grab a screw from the top and just twist it, and it gets stuff out very easily. And they have everything from sort of small ones up through channel locks.
And the they is Japan or a particular?
Well, Vamplier is one of them.
That's the brand name.
That's the particular brand for this tool. Okay. I do like Engineer. There's a company called Engineer that makes really nice scissors that are not very expensive. And then there is the Koken makes a whole bunch of wrenches and box wrenches and ratchets and so on that are really very interesting. Like they have a ball bearing detent to grab a bolt. Some of them are magnetic. Some of them are offset. They're just really interesting, sort of unusual designs. The downside is that you don't see Imperial or SAE incredibly often.
And so these are all being ordered online. Is there a particular site that you're going to find these?
I usually just I look at YouTube and TikTok. There's sort of big groups of people who are into tools in general or Japanese tools.
Right.
There's one guy I think called Mr. Subaru that he'll find people challenge him. They say, look at this expensive Snap-on tool, and he figures out who actually makes it, and you can get it for less. And with the review, he also buys a lot of Japanese tools and reviews them.
And so, where do you actually purchase them from?
Amazon, typically, for me. Amazon.jp.
So Amazon will be carrying these tools. This is just a way. So the
Vampliers
would be on Amazon as well.
Yeah.
And this other company you mentioned, what was it?
Vamplier, Engineer. Koken. The other thing is I've started to look at Japanese carbon steel knives that they've sharpened to a much finer point, but they rust if you don't take care of them.
Right.
So they cut very, very nicely compared to stainless steel, but they are hard to take care of and require a lot more care.
And is there a particular brand or name?
I haven't figured that out yet.
Okay, all right.
They run into the hundreds or north of $1,000 very quickly. So I purchased $200 knives, figuring that was a good place to get started.
Right.
One was pretty good. One is very fancy and requires a bunch of care.
Mm-hmm. The Koken, how do you spell that?
I think it's Koken.
Okay.
And let me look real quick.
Yeah. And so the advantage of the Japanese tools is that are
It's
these ones
KO-KEN, sorry.
okay, KO-KEN.
Yeah.
Um, so these are unusual tools in that sense, not so much that they're
They're
better
not
made.
super unusual. They're just very nice.
Hmm.
Um, they're thoughtful, useful,
Hmm.
you know, they're not like weird things you don't need all that often.
Hmm. They're just maybe slightly better versions of the ordinary things. Uh,
Yeah.
so okay, that's a great tip. Thank you for that. So Josh, what's a second tool that you're liking these days?
Well, I thought about the Vampliers, which I find very handy, and I realized that I carry when I have to go somewhere and take something apart or fix something, I have a small handful of tools that I take with me. And the most important one of those is this Wera kit, a Tool Check Plus. I don't know if they still make it or if they make a slightly different variant,
Could
but
you hold it by your head so I can kind of maybe describe it to people?
yeah,
It's not really quite focused yet.
it'll focus.
There it is. Okay, so it's like a little plastic, it may be the size of a large phone these days, and it's got a bunch of bits in it and
It's
some.
got a bunch of bits. It's got it's got a little ratchet
Uh-huh.
and screwdriver and a little quick change bit and the little bolt heads,
And
bolt
it's all
wrenches.
in one little plastic carry case.
It's one little plastic carry case, and importantly, um, it's got hex Torx, security Torx, Phillips, and Posidrive. And Posidrive, which most people don't know, it's got these little pips in the corners of it's a crosshead that's got slightly different design than Phillips. So if you try to open Phillips with a Posidrive, or if you open a Posidrive screw with a Phillips driver, it will usually ruin the screw head.
Right.
And then I carry with it this little Klein screwdriver. It's just a 8-in-1 stubby little screwdriver. It's just a small screwdriver that takes the magnetic tips, just like the Wera kit has. So it's just normal 1/4-inch bits. There we go.
There it goes. And so it's got a very stubby handle, but it's a fat, stubby handle and a very short. Um,
And it's got some bits in the top of the thing as well.
which you can put in the different bits into the front,
Yeah.
replaceable.
And then Titan has a little tiny ratcheting screwdriver, swivel head screwdriver to let you get into weird places.
There he goes. And that's blue color, but it's just a single piece of metal, right?
Yeah, it's just an aluminum handle with a swiveling ratchet head that
Swiveling
also takes the 1/4-inch hex.
Okay.
So
So this is part of your mobile kit when you go onto the field, onto the racetrack, wherever you've got.
the racetrack, you usually need heavier stuff, but this is like I have to take apart an electronic device or something somewhere.
And going to the racetrack, do you have like a whole toolkit out of your car, or is it like in
There's
a
a trailer with a full workshop in there now.
Okay.
But I don't it's not mine usually.
Okay.
Someone else that belongs to someone else
And the self-driving cars, are they full-size cars or are they model cars?
they are up to full-size vehicles.
Oh, okay. All right. So you do need tools for that.
Well, I run the event. The teams need the tools.
Mhm.
But they're not usually running things like real race cars that tend to break a lot
Mhm.
or run into things and get broken a lot.
Okay. Um,
So it's
so
Priuses and stuff like that.
right, right. And so what's a third category or third tools that you are maybe we don't know about?
So on a completely different note, I have switched for I'm mostly writing software a great deal, and I am kind of older, so I never got into these fancy GUIs and Visual Studio. I still use a terminal emulator, and I have been using one called WezTerm, which is written in Rust. It's very fast. But most importantly, it lets me actually cat images right at the command line. So I don't have to, I do a lot of generative art stuff. So when I run something and then I can see the output right there, I don't have to switch to a browser or anything. I can just inline work. And I can actually do a little screen share.
You said you were using generative stuff. Are you using one of the engines, or do you have your own engine?
I'm not using AI. It's just generative or procedural art.
Oh,
It
I
just
see.
means
Okay.
there's a bunch of rules.
All right, all
So
right.
I run my imagining it ran, I can actually see the output of my code, my output right there,
Okay.
instead of switching to some other thing.
And so the tool that you're talking about, what is this? Where does the tool live, or what is the actual
This
tool?
is the window is the tool. This is WezTerm.
Okay, I see. All right.
So it's also got Lua control, so you can do very sophisticated. I don't do much other than the defaults, but it because it works well for me. But
And you're taking those images and you're printing them out with plot
yeah,
recorders.
yeah. When I run the code, it actually generates both a PNG, so I can look at it immediately, and an SVG file that I can post process for the plotter.
Okay. And again, that's called the little app is called Wes.
WezTerm. I think the guy who creates its name is Wez,
Okay,
or
Wes.
his handle or whatever.
Okay. All right. And that runs in terminal on what platform?
Uh, it runs on Windows, Linux, and Mac. It runs
Okay.
on everything. And it's even on Windows. It's even got a built-in SSH client. So I'm able to log in from wherever and work on my stuff,
Okay.
which is very nice.
All
So
righty.
if I go down to my shop, there's only a Windows machine down there,
I recall
connected to the
you were
CNC
trying to
machine.
make a plotter. Do you have a plotter that you recommend as a starter for people that?
Or if you're going to go with new, AxiDraw is really the only way to go. There are kind of crappy clones, but I wouldn't try that stuff. The
AxiDraw is the kind of the go-to.
AxiDraw is the kind of go-to. Yeah, they provide a ton of support. They write the software that the clones use. It's worth sticking with them.
Okay.
And they're great people.
Do they have like a beginner model?
Their stuff, you basically install the drivers in Inkscape, I think, and just plot. So they're not complicated. It's pretty and plug and play. It's not like a modern printer where you just hit file print, but Inkscape and so on can directly drive it.
But I mean, is there just one model? There's just one kind to do that?
There's 3 or 4 models, just different sizes.
Okay. All right.
I personally use like 90s Roland and HP plotters. They are less capable in some ways, much faster in others.
Uh-huh. Okay. But those are used, means these are vintage.
Vintage, yeah, yeah. I mean, the one I'm using here is from 1989.
Uh-huh.
So
Hmm.
uh,
They probably need maybe some maintenance.
a little bit. There's a cracked wheel that I'm trying to figure out how to replace, but
Okay.
it runs fine for the moment.
Yeah. Okay, Josh. So what's a fourth tool for you?
The fourth was sort of a toss up. I was thinking about how to just organize bits and bobs. And I realized I had 2 solutions for that. And one of them has multiple uses. So the first is, those printable fridge magnet sheets, those flat sheet magnets.
I mean, they're kind of like
They're
flexible.
flexible.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you put one down with the magnet up and put
Ah,
screws on it, they stay put. So
okay.
if you're taking a thing apart and you want this screw, from the upper left corner to you want to remember that it was in the upper left corner, you can put it there and it stays put. For larger stuff like a vehicle or something, I use lunch trays.
I mean, like aluminum lunch trays, like
Plastic ones
baking
usually.
tray, like a baking tray.
No, lunch, they're not, they're plastic or fiberglass.
Okay,
They've got an angled edge.
yeah.
And I use those quite a bit. But I also buy them and put them under the sink. So I push them back against the back of the cabinet. So if the sink
Oh,
drips,
I see.
you have like, a half gallon's worth of
Safety
time before
buffer.
you notice it and it destroys your cabinets. And in fact, I put anything liquid in a cabinet in the lunch trays.
All
So
right.
I've now had twice. I had a bottle of Simple Green. These polypropylene containers. It's the sort of cloudy, thin, soft plastic that bottles. That stuff comes.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
had 2 times now where they leaked and destroyed a cabinet.
Huh.
So
So now
I
you
put
put a tray under
I put a
anything.
tray underneath, so at least I have some time to
Right,
notice and catch it,
right.
rather than I bought at some point like 5 or 6. Those they're sort of a large. It's like a 2-gallon box with a spigot on the front, and you get it at the grocery store. It's just a box of distilled water or whatever.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I had 6 of them in a cabinet next to each other, just a sort of emergency backup
Yeah,
water. And also I use water I use it to make inks and paints and things.
right.
Because there's a lot of stuff in my tap water. And one of them leaked and started leaning over, and it sort of put the right pressure on the one next to it. So it leaked and started leaning over, and 4 of the 6 things leaked and soaked into the MDF wood, causing everything to swell and break and so on. So, A, don't do that. Don't buy those things.
Right.
But B, put something under them. I put the lunch tray under the sinks because I've had, faucets leak like 2 or 3 times now. And I
Right.
put a sensor in there
Huh.
so that it catches them.
So tell me about the sensor. Did you find a sensor that's kind of like battery powered?
Yeah, there's all sorts of inexpensive
Does
battery
it
powered
make
leak
an
detectors.
alarm or does it send you a notice or how does it work?
I got the really cheap ones. It's a 9-volt battery and a pair of wires. And if the water bridges the wires, it starts screaming.
Okay.
So roughly, unfortunately, they also start screaming when they run out of power, and you're
Uh,
wondering what the hell is that noise. But that's the price to pay for not having your cabinets destroyed or whatever.
yeah. It's kind of like a smoke alarm where the batteries start beeping.
There is a whole house leak detector that you can actually install in line with your water main.
So it just notices whether something is happening, like whether there's water movement.
And if it's a very small amount, it's a leak, right? If you turn on the faucet, that's quite a bit. And if you say, I'm going away, there should be nothing, and there's something, it actually cuts off the entire house, or it can.
Yeah, I just talked to somebody's fairly well known who has 2 houses, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, and was coming up to his house. On the way to the house, he got a call from the water company saying, you may want to check your house because there's a huge amount of water. And he arrived and they was just like streaming off of the second floor.
Oh, geez.
Like $100,000 in damages because of a leaky toilet somewhere. It just something burst and they weren't home. And luckily he was actually on his way. But
I've had 4 or 5 water damage leaks.
hmm.
We used to have a condo. It had 2 big ones, and then a couple at the house that weren't a big deal because I figured out what was leaking. When like the roof was leaking, and I just cut a hole in the ceiling, figured out where it was, and pulled out all the insulation so it wasn't wet. So we didn't get mold, right? And if you do it within a couple of hours, it's much more fixable than
Days or weeks or months.
days, or it's a week later. But we used to have a condo, and the AC unit, the drain got plugged, and it was in the middle of the condo, and it leaked through the floor, and it destroyed the entire flooring, and that was like, I don't know, probably $20,000 just to replace the nice flooring.
Yeah. So have you, and you haven't gone as far as getting the whole house version yet?
There's one that I've chosen, and I'm sitting on camel, watching for the price to come down to within 10% of MSRP. So it's called Flow by Moen, and I'm waiting for it to be like, I think they're $699 or $899, right. And I'm waiting for it to not be $1,500 for people trying to poach them.
Yeah, and the way that do you have any idea how they work?
I don't. I imagine there's some sort of flow sensor and a valve. It's probably not incredibly complicated, but
you probably have to put it in line.
Yes, it has to be in line. There's another one that I think many utilities will actually just get you a discount for. I remember there was one, I forget what it's called, I can look it up, but PG&E was giving a coupon for the full value of the thing, and it straps onto the pipe, and I think it uses ultrasound to tell if there's water flow. And I actually got it, but couldn't there's no room in the water box to hook it up.
I see. Okay. Well, that sounds like a cool tool. Maybe someone else, a reader, might know more about it and put something in the comments. So Josh, in the couple of minutes we have remaining, you mentioned some of your self-driving or race track or the little rally that you run. Is there anything else? Do you want to talk about that, or there's something else you want to talk about?
I actually we got the videos done just a few days ago from the event, so I will have new videos to show within. I'd probably just have to spend another hour writing the release and uploading the last video to YouTube.
Can you describe it then a little bit versus to our listeners?
So self-racing cars, is basically I rent out a full-size racetrack, which is called, the type is called a road course. So that's a loopy, twisty thing, like a F1 circuit or Coda or whatever. This year I did it at Laguna Seca, which is a 2-mile track with 11 turns.
Where is that?
It's in Monterey. I should have sent you a note since it was actually pretty close to you.
Monterey, California.
And basically I invite out a bunch of teams building autonomous products. And they vary from, there's one company that was turning a personal mobility, small motorcycle, electric motorcycles type of thing into an autonomous vehicle. The company's called Faction. There's another, and they managed to get one of their units to drive around the track all by itself. Little companies like Faction. There's another one called Point One that makes like a GPS Plus that's got an accuracy of only inches. They actually ran the track in reverse. So they went backwards up the corkscrew, which is kind of funny. The corkscrew is probably one of the most famous single turns at any racetrack in the Americas. Anyone who's played a driving game knows that turn in that track. Down to, there's one guy who had a sort of fairly high end, but still very, RC car, did most of a lap by itself, and he's actually gotten around the track fully in the past.
So when you say a race, are they literally two cars?
We're not doing wheel-to-wheel racing yet. It's more
can you complete the course
than right. Actual.
And what about all the the Teslas and the Waymos and stuff? Are they like not able to do that, or they're not included, or what's
I invite them. Sometimes people show up from those places. Right. They're not really trying to get around a track, so they don't, there's a way to drive on the track that's not, in the right-hand lane and go around, right? And there's no lane markings or anything, right? It doesn't look like much like a street other than the strip of asphalt. I think in 2018 or 19, someone did put a Tesla on the track in autopilot to see what it would do, and of course, it didn't work.
So you're saying the commercial ones are not able to do it as well as some of the other ones.
They're not able to do it because they don't, they're not
trying.
Designed or set up for that.
I see. Okay.
But there's all sorts of ways. Some companies use vision, some companies use GPS only. So it's more of a playground. There's not a lot of laws and rules about what can go on the track as long as we are safe. There's 15 people watching the track at any given time. There's a human with a kill switch. All the humans are behind a concrete barrier. There's just not that much that can go wrong.
Right.
Which works out nicely.
And so the general idea is that some of these, we'll call them amateurs, may be able to do it much better than any of the commercial ones because it's a different thing. But then eventually you'll have car-to-car racing. It'll get good enough that you can actually
that would be the idea. Yeah, that would be great. Autonomy is only barely working out in the real world. It's interesting. A lot of people will come out of the blue to tell me no one wants to see this or hear about it. I don't want to watch electric cars going around without people. But what they don't know is that the people building this stuff aren't building it for spectators.
Right.
When I compete, there's no one in the stands either. No one's watching me. I'm not doing it because of the spectators. I don't give a shit, right? I do it for the personal challenge, and the engineering is the first part of the race, right? In the 40s, 50s, if you wanted to race, first you had to build a race car, right? So, Bruce McLaren and Colin Chapman, they were engineers and drivers.
Right. That's so again, what do you call your rally? What's it called?
Self-racing cars.
Self-racing cars. There'll be a link. If someone wants to join, you'll have some way for them to sign up or whatnot.
There's a blog and an announcement.
Okay.
There's a mailing list, an announcement mailing list that they can sign up for.
And what is the current status of the champion, the thing that has done the best? What is it? Has it been they've run around and completed in a certain number of time, or what's
right now? 0.1 nav has been consistently dominating. They are relatively fast. It's still a good 20 seconds slower than a human.
Of a car or a team?
They're actually a company that builds a GPS. It's called localization system, and then they connected it up and have it navigating on its own, sort of for fun, I guess.
Okay, and so they're able to complete the course.
Yes,
and they can do it the fastest.
Yes, they got bored of completing the course, sort of going forwards a couple of years ago.
Right.
So they run it in. Last year they ran the car backwards around the track backwards.
Okay.
So the car was actually pointed the correct direction, but it was in reverse.
Right.
This year they did it up at Laguna Seca. So I don't know if that's ever been set, having a lap time in the reverse. It is not as fast as forwards because the control problem is very much a different one.
Okay. All right. Well, great. That's really fantastic. And I hope a couple other people are inspired to join you.
That would be great.
And again, thanks for sharing your tools. And I, as always, enjoy chatting with you, hearing what you're up to.
Thank you.
And thanks again, everyone. Till next week. We're glad that you enjoyed this issue of the Cool Tools Show and Tell. Just want to remind you that we have some other coolish material on our YouTube channel here. Please subscribe, comment, like. In addition, this Cool Tools Show and Tell is also available in an Audible podcast form. You can subscribe to it wherever you subscribe to other podcasts if you just wanted to listen. And if you're listening, know that there is a visual version of this on our YouTube channel where we're actually showing the tools, and there's a little bit more of a visual component there. In addition, the same folks that put us, the Cool Tools website out, we also put out a free newsletter every week. It's very, very short. It's 1 page or less. We recommend 6 very brief items that are very succinct, easy to read. You can deal with it in a couple minutes. And every week we bring to you the 6 cool things that we have uncovered and want to share. And it's called Recommendo with 1 M, recommendo.com. You'll be able to find it there. It's free. Join 50,000 plus other subscribers every Sunday morning. You'll get it in your email box. And it's actually one of the most popular things that we produce. But we do produce other newsletters as well. One of them is called What's in Your Bag. We have one that goes out to tools and tips for your workshop. So you can get those at our website, and they are also free. And finally, I want to mention the fact that we do have a Patreon, and this podcast and this vidcast are supported by Patreon supporters. The minimum is $1 a month. And for that, you get an email to ask us anything. We'll respond and answer your question if we're able to. There are other higher levels. You can all see those at our Patreon page. And all those links are below right here. So thank you again for being a fan. And we'll keep producing stuff if you enjoy it. Thanks. We give thanks to this week's patrons, who include Phil King, John Wood, Matthew Robbins, Spike Yakwa, Dave, Sean Hartley, David Long, Matt Gromes, David Bouquet, Les Howard, and Adam Bristol. Thank you, each one, for your support. We appreciate it.